everybody, and welcome to the California Small Farm Conference. If you're here looking for the land access resources and tools available today, you're in the right place. We've got a wonderful workshop for you on a very hot topic. So I'm going to pass it on, but just want to encourage people to use the chat feature to ask questions, engage, make comments, share resources, and besides that, enjoy the workshop. And why don't you take it away?
Thanks, Evan. Can everyone hear me okay? Great. Yes, welcome. Welcome indeed. Second day of the 35th Annual California Small Farm Conference, hosted by our friends at California Alliance with Family Farmers. Thank you very much for hosting this great conference. Lots of really great topics. This is the first of two-part series on land access. Today we're talking about resources and tools available today for land access. If you're interested in a more policy and advocacy-oriented discussion about the systemic issues in accessing equitable land tenure, then please join us this evening at 6 Pacific time for the second part of our land equity discussion. So I'm Deborah Nares. I'm the Senior Manager at American Farmland Trust, and together with Jamie Fanous, Policy Director at CAFF, we will be co-facilitating this discussion around resources and tools for land access for farmers. Do us a favor and introduce yourselves in the chat, please. Add your name, your title, pronouns, location, and the land acknowledgement. If you're not familiar with the land acknowledgement, we're going to drop a link in the chat to help you out. And that way our panelists can know who's in the room. So I'm going to introduce our panelists, but before that, I think we should do a little intro to the topic and just lay the groundwork for the conversation at hand today. What do you think, Janet?
Let's do it. And thank you, Deborah, for kicking us off. So hi, everyone. Happy Monday. I hope we're all in a very cozy place, as California is really wet and cold today. And so, yeah, inviting you all into the chat to provide those introductions. We're definitely curious as to who's joining us today in this panel discussion. And so before going into our presentation today, let's get some grounding going. And it would be great to have you all answer the question, what is your relationship to the land? So before diving into today's resource offering, I want to ground this session with the historical realities that have contributed to this serious and systemic issue. It's a story of historical dispossession and continued discrimination that has contributed to the barriers for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Indigenous and Native American people involved in food production, stewardship, and gathering on traditional ancestral lands have faced displacement and relegation since before the founding of this country. The number of Black farmers and Black landowners have drastically declined since the 1920s, where 1 in 7 farmers were Black, over 925,000 nationwide. So together owning over 16 million acres of farmland. By 1997, when Pigford versus Glickman, a USDA lawsuit was fought, Black farmers were losing 30,000 acres per month. By 1999, those numbers fell to 18,000 farmers owning just 2.3 million acres. The loss of these farmers have been attributed in large part due to discrimination and practices by the USDA. And this department has admitted to such practices. Latinx make up the vast majority of the nation's farm workers, but very few are able to start their own farm operations. 3 out of 4 hired farm workers are foreign-born, but USDA loans and programs are limited to US citizens, making it nearly impossible for the majority of farm workers to start their own farms. A drastic demographic shift among Asian Americans began with the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882. And later in 1913, when the California Alien Land Law prohibited Asian Americans from owning land. Just between 1920 and 1930, Japanese-owned farmland dropped by more than 40%. Centuries of systemic racism, paired with today's massive corporate and private investment land grabs, access to land is becoming more and more impossible to access, which is why we're having this conversation today. These barriers are broad and deep and require systems level policy shifts. But there are useful tools and resources currently available to access land, and it's critically important to know what is available to address those immediate needs. And we'll dive into that. And so I'll pass it back to Deb, who is gonna give an overview of the speaker's bios. And I hope you all learned something from that introduction, right? That we have a lot of work to do and we're headed in that direction.
Thank you, Janet. Okay, so our first speaker will be Margaret Rossano, Senior Associate from the Equity and Conservation on Working Lands program at California FarmLink. Margaret supports California FarmLink's land access and conservation activities under the Equity and Conservation on Working Lands program. She helps to administer FarmLink's land portal and also helps facilitate the land access and tenure assistance and its work with conservation landholders and partners to advance equitable land access and capital. Margaret will then be followed by Janet Valenzuela, Senior Policy Associate at Los Angeles Food Policy Council. Janet is an eco-mujerista from Huntington Park in Southeast LA. Her work is centered in bridging food sovereignty and environmental justice issues in LA area, using alternative models to environmentally disadvantaged communities. She's dedicated in challenging ongoing structures of colonialism that work towards rationalizing the use of destructive elements in her community and those alike. We'll hold time for questions after each speaker. So please go ahead and drop your questions in the chat or the QA prompt. Margaret.
All right, so let me just go ahead and share my screen here. All right, can everybody see that? That's good. Okay. All right, hello everyone. Thank you to Deb and Janet for the introduction and for grounding this conversation. I am so glad to be invited to be part of this conversation today to talk about the tools and resources that we have now to help address the land access and affordability crisis that we find ourselves in here in California and across the country. I myself have been a beginning farmer and have encountered some of these challenges in terms of finding land and having secure tenure. And in my role at FarmLink, I work to support farmers and ranchers every day who encounter all of these barriers due to the multitude of systemic issues that Janet was just highlighting for us. So I know that talking about land access and tenure can feel discouraging or overwhelming sometimes, but it is heartening to see the increased attention and resources that are being put towards this issue at both the federal and the state level. And I'm just excited to be able to share with all of you today a little bit more about FarmLink and our work generally, and then specifically the ways that we are able to support farmers and ranchers with access to land and with land tenure. So just a little bit about our organization. FarmLink is a nonprofit. We have been around since 1999. And so as our name implies, our roots are in agricultural land linking. So matching folks who are looking for land with folks who have land opportunities. But our organization has evolved quite a bit over the past 20 years. That includes becoming a certified Community Development Financial Institution, or CDFI, in 2013, and also expanding our in-depth educational programming. So our mission is to invest in the prosperity of farmers, ranchers, and fishers through education, access to land, and lending. And we work statewide. We have offices in Aptos and Sacramento, and our focus is on serving beginning farmers and farmers of color, as well as sustainable farmers. So as we work towards our vision of a healthy food system where farmers and ranchers have equitable opportunities, we really focus on these building blocks of land access and secure tenure, fair financing, and business education. And we have an integrated program model where we seek to provide wraparound services to help farmers establish and sustain agricultural businesses. So in terms of our day-to-day work, in our land and business department, we host a land portal, which I'm going to talk about further, to facilitate linking between land seekers and landholders. We offer a full suite of agreement building services to support farmers with land tenure. We now also run a year-long succession education program, and we offer 2 in-depth business resilience courses, as well as additional programming to help with loan readiness and access to our lending and education programs. As a CDFI, we are a mission-based lender, and we are here to serve farmers and ranchers who may be unbanked or underbanked or not able to access capital through the traditional banking system. We are also one of the only CDFIs in the nation that is focused exclusively on serving small to mid-scale and sustainable agricultural businesses. We offer a range of financing options, everything from annual operating loans to land loans, infrastructure and equipment loans, and also conservation loans. And these include microloans all the way up to very substantial loans of close to $2 million. So in terms of education, we want farmers to have the knowledge and skills to develop a profitable business and be able to sustain that business on the land over the long term. And we also want farmers to have the support and tools necessary to be able to transition their businesses and land to the next generation. So we currently offer 2 in-depth educational programs, the Resilerator and Resilador. These courses are targeted for people who have at least a couple of years running their businesses and are really ready to take them to the next level in terms of their accounting system, their business planning, and managing risk for long-term business resilience. These are parallel courses, but the main difference is that one, Resilerator, is fully in English, Resilador is fully in Spanish, and both of these courses have a strong focus on peer-to-peer learning and really bringing in the expertise that each of our farmers and ranchers bring to the course. Both courses run once every year. They are a 10-week course. Resilerator is currently online and includes both synchronous class meetings as well as asynchronous work. And then Resilador continues to incorporate in-person synchronous meetings, and so is more based in our Central Coast region. And then, as I mentioned, we now also have a year-long succession education course, the Regenerator, and this course is for farm teams. So farmers and ranchers who are retiring or ready to transition their business and have an identified successor. That successor or successors could be family members, can also be non-family members. And the course is designed to walk them through developing that succession plan over the course of a year so that they walk away able to execute on that plan. We do incorporate a strong focus on communication into the course and work closely with the California Agricultural Mediation Program, or CalAMP, who really provides a lot of support in terms of those key communication skills that are so integral to successful succession planning. All of our educational programs do include an incentive package. So program participants receive free one-on-one follow-up TA based on their stated goals and needs. There are additional follow-up programming that delves more specifically into a particular topic. So for example, taxation. And in addition, our program graduates are also eligible for certain loan opportunities. So on that note, I did want to share that FarmLink currently has a number of different pathways through which 0% interest loans may be available, including to help purchase land and also for financing implementation of conservation practices. So again, the graduates of Resilerator or Resilerador are eligible for loans at 0% interest and no fees. We also are offering down payment assistance loans up to $100,000 with potentially a 0% interest rate. We are also piloting and continuing to develop conservation loan projects. So this includes a cost share bridge loan. And the idea is that with many government conservation programs, so perhaps the NRCS Environmental Quality Incentives Program, EQIP, or some of our state programs like Healthy Soils Program or SWEEP, there are upfront costs that are required in order to participate, and before that cost share payment or grant payment actually comes to the farmer. So this loan is meant to help bridge that gap and help reduce that as a barrier to participating in these programs. And we also are looking just to be able to help folks finance conservation practices, even if they are not participating in a formal conservation program. And then in the wake of the serious and catastrophic flooding that occurred earlier this year, we are also offering disaster loans, again, to help bridge the gap potentially when people may be waiting on payments for other disaster relief assistance they're eligible for, or potentially if they are not eligible for other types of government or relief programs. So in terms of our land access and land tenure work, it is housed in our Equity and Conservation on Working Lands, or EQUAL program. And within EQUAL, we have a land portal platform to help farmers find land. We offer support with various types of land tenure agreements. And so we can help with building and negotiating equitable agricultural leases, as well as other types of agreements like grazing contracts or sale of business agreements. We also have a number of other resources available for land seekers and landholders, which I will discuss a little bit later. And we can provide individual assistance as well as help refer folks to service providers, CPAs, appraisers, attorneys, etc. So in order to access our land portal, the first step is to register. So this is our new homepage. And if you are registered, you would be able to log in here. But if not, the first step is to register, which you can do by going to Services and Land Access. And then you will be able to join as a land seeker. So we do have a requirement that you have at least 2 years of commercial farming experience in order to qualify as a land seeker, meaning that you have been earning farm income as an employee or owner. Unfortunately, we are not able to work with aspiring farmers, but we will provide you with resources and information to help you meet those criteria in the future. So there's a $20 registration fee that gives you access to the portal, but also to all of our other services, including our agreement building services. And after you register, you will be asked to fill out a land seeker profile. So I really wanted to call some attention to this. I know it can seem like it's just one more step in the registration process, but it is an opportunity to present yourself to other landholders and land seekers. So with your approval, your profile becomes public in the portal, and that means that other people can search for you. So a landholder who is wanting to identify who might be registered farmers that are in the area and could be a good fit for that person's land opportunity can then search for farmers, in a particular county or by other criteria, and get a sense of who you are and what you're looking for and contact you. So that's one reason why I really encourage people who are registered with us to definitely take the time to fill out the profile and also keep it updated. So this is once you're logged into the portal. And I did just want to emphasize that in order to be able to share more land opportunities with more people across a wide geographic area, FarmLink has really put resources into developing this online platform. So the idea is that land seekers and landholders can connect directly, and we are not involved in that one-to-one linking. There are specific situations where we may be more involved in facilitating that linking. For example, if there's a technology barrier, or in cases where folks need additional language support. But generally, the idea of the portal is that land seekers and landholders can connect directly with one another. And so once you are logged in, there are a bunch of features. So of course you can see and edit your profile. In settings, the portal is now fully bilingual in English and Spanish. So if you prefer to use the portal in Spanish, you can set your language under settings. And of course you can check your messages. Again, the communication in the portal operates through a direct messaging system. And so you can see what messages you've received. And so of course, within the portal, you can search for land listings. So this is an example of a land listing search specifically for active opportunities in San Diego. There are a number of filter options that you can use to look for opportunities, county, but also acreage, the kind of business opportunity or land opportunity. So a lot of these are leases, but some are sale opportunities, and some may be other types of arrangements, someone looking for a formal business partner. And you can also favorite, so you can develop your own list of favorite opportunities that you want to follow up on. In addition, as I mentioned, you can also search for people. So let's say, you searched and you came across this person, you'd be able to see all of their profile information. You can send them a message. There's also some additional features. So the portal does allow for bilingual messaging so that you can send a message in your preferred language, and the person who receives that message will read that message in their preferred language. We also do have a block user option. That hasn't really come up, but we did feel it was important to give that option in case it was needed. And I would just add that I really encourage anyone who has questions about the portal or is encountering difficulties, please do reach out to us. This isn't just a faceless system. There are people behind the system, and we really want to make sure that it is useful and accessible for everyone. We are continuously working to improve it. We're continuously working to increase the number of land opportunities that we're able to share through this platform. So please don't hesitate to contact us if you have a question or if there's something about your experience that you would like to share. We really welcome that feedback. But as we are acknowledging in this conversation, it's increasingly hard to access land due to a variety of systemic barriers, and FarmLink is just one avenue that's available to help find the right property and land opportunity. But we are here to support you in developing your land access strategy and plan. And we encourage you to pursue all of these other different options. So of course, there are other FarmLink type organizations and other organizations across the state doing this work, many of whom may hold, relationships within that region. Ultimately, land access work is very place-based, and so those relationships are very important. It's always great to talk with established farmers in the area that you're looking. They can share all of their expertise and knowledge and about their own journey. And again, they may know of specific options. Maybe you see a piece of land that looks promising, has come up for sale or for lease, or looks like maybe it's not being used, but it could be a good place to farm, but you don't know who owns the land. One option that we sometimes suggest is you can always look up who the landowner is at the assessor's office. And if you're a registered land seeker, if you're working with us, we're happy to provide a brochure where we sometimes review letters for people if they want to provide some kind of introductory letter or other documentation about themselves. And then you're welcome to introduce yourself as working with FarmLink. We're happy to support in that way. One thing that I would say is if you are looking to purchase land, we do recommend that you work with a realtor. We are not realtors. We do not have access to the MLS listings. And so in a case of looking for land to purchase, it is really also very helpful to have someone who is looking on your behalf and has access to all those opportunities that are coming on the market. But of course, the land access is not only about private land, and there are many other types of land opportunities available through other public agencies and institutions and with conservation landholders. And these agencies and organizations, they may have a mandate to make land available or to maintain the property as working land. And therefore, they may be in a position to offer favorable terms. The other piece of that is that they are likely to perhaps require you to be involved in some kind of educational programming or responsibility. There may be, recreational opportunities for the public on that land. There may be specific conservation projects or maintenance. So, you need to evaluate whether that's going to fit with your business operation, your personality, but these are all places where there may be opportunities. And the other thing to point out is that these types of land opportunities are more likely to involve a public request for proposal or application process that's required. So we do share these types of opportunities on the land portal, but because again, they do often require this public application process, and there may be a relatively short timeline on that, We also will sometimes share these out through our social media or through other types of communication channels. So it's always good to check there, because we may be sharing these types of options that way as well. So it's not just about land access, right? That's the first fundamental piece, but that's really a moot point if there isn't secure tenure. And so in our Equal program, we are able to offer a full suite of agreement building services, and we can help land seekers and landholders. So we work with both parties to build and negotiate equitable agreements that suit their circumstances. So we are not lawyers. We have worked with lawyers over the years to help develop language that we have available to customize your agreement. And again, we're not here to represent either party. We are multi-partial advocates, and we're here to help create an agreement that reflects both parties' mutual understanding and expectations. We work on a variety of lease structures, everything from a traditional cash lease to a crop share to more creative agreements where there might be incentive payments or rent reduction for reaching conservation milestones or a pathway to ownership that is part of the lease. We also are able to work on grazing leases and grazing contracts. And again, we can assist with business purchase agreements as well. The first step in signing up for our agreement building services, again, is to register as that same land seeker registration process. And then we now have this agreement building services inquiry form, which definitely needs a better, easier name. But then you can submit a form to enter our lease pipeline. So we can support you fully through the process of developing a lease. We also are able to review a draft or existing agreement. But regardless of whether you work with us, there really is value in the process of developing and negotiating a lease agreement. I know that, again, with the scarcity of land opportunities, and it's easy to feel disempowered, but it really is worth taking the time, because ultimately a successful agreement comes down to the relationship between the parties. And you could have a well-written contract, but if that is not built on a relationship where there's mutual trust and understanding, then you're still likely to encounter conflict down the road. So we are here to support both parties in negotiating terms and, importantly, understanding the terms that end up in your lease, and to help clarify needs and expectations and really think through various scenarios and responsibilities. I would highlight in particular maintenance and infrastructure. This is an area where we see a lot of conflicts come up because there just was not enough detail or conversation included in the lease about the responsibilities and costs, or there were improvements that someone made or wanted to make that were not actually written into the lease agreement. So that's just an example of how we can help with that negotiation process. And also dispute resolution. Everything is great until it isn't, and it's really important as you're developing an agreement to actually think about how you're going to address conflict down the road, and to include a dispute resolution process or language in your agreement. And also just take a moment here to emphasize the importance of having a written lease. Besides the fact that there are a lot of other reasons and people who are going to want to see that. So for example, if you are applying for financing, if you are applying for certification, if you are applying for certain USDA programs, they are all going to want you to provide a written agreement, but also there are all of the other reasons to have a written lease, including that, you know, memories often don't match. It's a way to have a document to refer back to. Again, the process of it is going to clarify everyone's goals and expectations, and you can establish that process for conflict resolution, but also, you know, what happens if someone breaches the lease? What are the terms of that? And of course, legal protection for both parties. And the other thing I would just mention is I see often that people do have a written lease, but then they've made other deals and agreements that are undocumented. And so, you know, if you make any sort of agreement related to your land tenure, whether that's about renewal or, you know, a rent reduction that was supposed to happen for some kind of work that you did, anything like that, it's really important to document it and include it in the lease agreement. So in addition to the land portal and our agreement building services, we also offer a variety of additional publicly available land access resources for land seekers and landholders, including the landholder toolshed that we've developed, which is a suite of resources for landholders to help them understand what is involved in terms of having a tenant on their land or involved in transitioning their land. Again, we're really trying to place an emphasis on landholder education because we want to ensure that we have educated landholders. A land seeker toolshed is also in development, so stay tuned for that. But there are actually quite a few resources in this landholder toolshed that are also available for land seekers. There's a number of resources here related to lease structure and lease rate. We have a farmland assessment field guide, which is really helpful in terms of doing your due diligence on a property and assessing the various factors that will determine whether it's viable for you and your farming operation, and also that will contribute to what a reasonable lease rate is. We have a regenerative grazing lease guide, so a lot here to dig into. And also within our resource library on our website, there's some other land access related resources. We have a whole farm succession guidebook. We also, if you really want to go deeper into the overall understanding of land tenure, we have a publication called Growing on Solid Ground, which includes a lot of information about leasing, owning, and then a whole collection of case studies about various ways to structure land access. And then just as I wrap up, and I think we're gonna set aside some time to talk about this more, and we'll definitely share these, but there are many organizations who are working to address the land access crisis. And so in no particular order, I just wanted to highlight a bunch of other resources and toolkits that really cover a wide variety of information, everything from kind of legal tools and considerations to how to develop your land access plan, how to finance land access. So I would encourage you also to check all of these out and all of the work that these other organizations are doing. So I think that concludes it for me. Thank you very much, and I will pass it on to Janet.
Awesome presentation, Margaret. I learned so much. I took so many notes. Did we want to make some time for questions right now and then move into my presentation? That'd be cool.
Yeah, there was a lot going on in the chat, and so I took down, I tried to catch all of the questions actually in our notes doc. So Do you want me to ask them, Janet, or is that okay? Okay. One of the questions I found in the chat was, does California FarmLink have plans to expand support for beginning and aspiring farmers? Also curious how California FarmLink envisions this land access work in combination with work with urban agriculture. So 2 questions, really. You're muted.
I guess I would want to kind of draw a little bit of a distinction. So I do not think that the organization at this time has plans to expand to work with aspiring farmers. But I would be clear that we do work with beginning farmers, but it's just that we want to see that minimum level of farming experience. And so just to be clear, that can include, say, that you're working as an employee, but if you did multiple apprenticeships and were being paid for that work, there is some flexibility within that. But it's just that our programs, whether it's the land portal, we really want to ensure that folks are kind of set up for success when they are connecting with landholders about opportunities. So yes, we work with beginning farmers with those caveats, but unfortunately we're not set up to work with aspiring farmers. As far as the second question was expanding to work more in terms of urban agriculture. Yeah, so I think that we currently are able to work with urban farmers right now. I know that we certainly would like to do more in terms of increasing the land opportunities that we're sharing on the portal, but we do and are able to work with folks in urban agricultural settings at this time. So there's no limit on that currently.
Awesome. The next question I found was, did your organization provide support in other languages such as Spanish or Chinese? You're still muted for me.
Oh.
Now you're back.
Okay. All right. So yes, we definitely provide support in Spanish. A majority of our staff are bilingual and speak Spanish. So we can fully support clients who are Spanish speakers. If folks need other support in other languages, we definitely are able to work to provide that support and work with interpreters or translation when we can. So very much set up to work with our Spanish speaking clients, and we will do our very best to provide support for other languages as well.
Great. I'm hanging on to some other questions from Paula and others, but I want to also, I think maybe we should just jump to your presentation, Jenna, and then we can save those for the end. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Handing it over.
Let me go ahead and all right. Does everybody see that? My screen okay? Okay, great. I got a thumbs up from Jamie. Well, first and foremost, again, my name is Janet Valenzuela. I'm with the Los Angeles Food Policy Council as a senior policy associate. And this is a great transition about urban agriculture. So a little bit of background on this presentation. The work that we are about to learn about when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to urban, is that it's trending. It's becoming popular, and it's because of all the work that has been done on the ground. And so I definitely want to pay homage to the people in Los Angeles, the people in unceded Tongva territories who are day in and day out the most optimistic people. I think if you grow food, right, you're one of the most optimistic people. And so it's just a presentation that pays homage to the people that are doing all the good work, and policies just constantly playing catch up. So I'm with the Los Angeles Food Policy Council. So our mission is to work, our work is to ensure food is healthy, affordable, fair, and sustainable for all. We have a vision, and that vision is guided by our Good Food for All agenda, where we believe that communities deserve access to good food, grown in a way that respects people and the planet. We work to create a local food system free from hunger, rooted in equity and access, supportive of farmers and food workers, and guided by principles of environmental stewardship and regeneration. So to accomplish our vision of a good food for all, our organization catalyzes, coordinates, and connects people across the region, including government, business, and community partnerships. Okay, so I will be highlighting some of the work that has stemmed from our Regenerative and Urban Ag Working Group. So the Los Angeles Food Policy Council convenes working groups. And so essentially they are interest groups that advance policy and advocacy agendas around our food ecosystem. So anything around education or collaborations, and anyone can join our meetings. So if this conversation intrigued you enough, you're more than welcome to Google Los Angeles Food Policy Council Working Group and find a working group that resonates with the work that you're doing, and how we can align more connections and collaborations that are just beyond the Los Angeles region. Okay. So to do a little bit of grounding, I think I really wanted to invite us into this really amazing literature for us. It's called Tending the Wild. If any of you have read it, let me know in the chat. But it was written by M. Cat Anderson. And I think it's really important that even though we are fostering an agenda, fostering a political landscape around urban agriculture, that we are very intentional of the roots, that we are very intentional that this is occupied land, and that we are very intentional to align our interests and our devotion to land acquisition as it's informed by Indigenous people and informed by traditional ecological knowledge. And so these are just little snippets from the book Tending the Wild. So if there's any resource that you walk away with today around land access, definitely give yourself permission to read Tending the Wild by M. Cat Anderson. So yeah, those are just a little bit of snippets from that book, and understanding the role that we play on occupied land. Okay, so the Regenerative and Urban Ag Working Group has focused on policy specifically around land access, land use, urban agriculture, site development. And so a little policy window that I'll be focusing on today is AB 551. There's other policy in mind, but for this particular conversation, I'll be focusing on AB 551, which is the AB 551, which is the Urban Agriculture Incentive Zones, UAIZ. And as the working group, our priority areas are the following. They are land access and community investments, community organizing networks for growers, particularly urban growers, and support with navigating systems and technical assistance and training. Okay, so AB 551. So in particular, this policy, California's Urban Agriculture Incentive Zone Act, provides tax incentives to landowners to transform vacant lots into small-scale agriculture plots. So there's major benefits of implementing AB 551, and they include that it has the potential to reduce number of food deserts across the city of LA, that it has potential to reduce transportation pollution from shipping produce, that it has a potential to of the creation of new green spaces in previously vacant lots, and it has a potential to bring an expansion of local farming coupled with sustainable agriculture. So this only helped enhance the City of LA's Green New Deal, and the City of LA's Green New Deal is essentially an agenda around meeting sustainable practices as a city, as one of the biggest cities in the world. And one of the goals and one of the outcomes that was laid out by this plan was to increase urban agriculture sites by 25%. And so this is a key incentive into why it's important to collaborate and invite government and the City of LA and the county to the conversations around UAIZ. So here's what the policy actually did. So a little bit of context, the policy did pass in 2017. So what does it get you? So the policy itself allows for 0.1 acre to 3 acres. So this agreement lasts a term of 5 years, and it must contain no habitual structures. And the agreements can only be renewed or terminated by the landowner. So what does it not get you? It does not get you support in the process around being a certified producer. It does not get you support in acquiring the land from the landowner. So you might get this on your own. So we don't have a FarmLink, but there might be potential, right, to bring in some collaboration with FarmLink to be a matchmaker of sorts. And it does not support with installation of water infrastructure, electricity, which is a very crucial need if you're growing food. And so although this is the policy and what it intended to do, doesn't mean that it actually did it. And so what is still needed is for us to include a pipeline, or to include some kind of a program where we could support urban growers finding land, or we could support urban growers with the cost of land, because Los Angeles is really expensive and finding land is really expensive. And if you do find land, it's probably a Superfund site, it's heavily contaminated, which is another need, right? Resources around soil testing and a list of updated resources, something as simple as like a directory of other organizations, a location, like a map of where there's mulch sites, a map of where there's seed banks or seed libraries, things like that are very much needed in the LA region. So what we did, so with the Regenerative and Urban Act, for the last 2 years, we've been hosting annual gatherings for growers, and we've done so with the support of CAFF. And in those last 2 sessions, we really did like a temperature check of local growers of what they needed support with. And those 3 things were really strongly aligned with the priority areas that we had as a working group, right? And land access was a big one. And so a way that we can center these conversations around land access is by inviting the Department of Regional Planning with the county and the Department of Planning with the City of LA. So we had the City of LA, we had the county, and we were the first facilitators, and we also invited 2 of the farmers that participated in UAIZ, and they shared a little bit about their experience with the program. They shared a little bit about the challenges that they had to experience navigating the program, and it really brought to light on the gaps, on the opportunities of how we can really push the city and push the county to streamline different processes or to rethink their processes a little bit more, to be a lot more coherent for the grower. And so we hosted this event last year. It was virtual. And it was the first event since the passing of UAIZ. And, you know, it's a way to really encourage city and county to have more conversations and to foster more opportunities to have these conversations with the public. So we had an enrollment clinic where people can understand the process, where people can learn of the different avenues that they can take prior to applying for UAIZ. So takeaways from the event, what really resonated with people and the information that was shared was, and for you all to know, is that since 2017, when the policy passed, there has been less than 10 permits that have been issued. So that's a really, really low turnout. And this is not on track with the city of LA's Green New Deal, right, of increasing urban agriculture by 25%. If we're hitting these numbers, we're not meeting those incentives, right? Of the 9 growers that participated in UAIZ, 7 of them had help from community organizations. And those community organizations were probably land trust organizations, the Los Angeles Food Policy Council, the Regenerative and Urban Ag Working Group. A big takeaway was that the process is confusing, right? And I think sometimes it's just important to hold space for the community to just process that, to just name that, to feel like they can connect with others that also found the process very confusing and isolating. And to note that 5 years is not a good timeline to set up a farm. I think for a lot of us in attendance, you know, after 5 years, you don't really get to see the fruits of your labor. 5 years is not enough of a time. There needs to be incentives for growers too. I think for those of you that read the slide on UAIZ, a lot of those incentives are steered to the landowners and not so much to the growers. And so what could it look like to promote incentives or promote programs within, you know, local universities who do have soil testing labs? How to work with also universities to provide like clinics that could support a certification process for urban growers that are interested in being a certified producer, or who would rather prefer a CSA model. And how to connect them to fencing, rain barrels, mulch drop-off, etc. And then the biggest takeaway from the event is that we need permanent access to land. The process as itself is more to benefit the landowner than it is to benefit the grower. And we need to create a program that develops a pipeline that if you are showing, you know, if you are meeting certain requirements of a land steward, then that'll get you access to the land, right? So those were some of the takeaways from the event. And in addition to this, there's 88 cities in the county. So there's 88 cities in LA County, and 61 of those cities have no mention of farms in their zoning policies. So beyond just this policy, right, the way that municipal codes were designed in an urban interface do not promote agriculture, do not promote gardening for that matter, especially if you live in an environmental justice community. Oftentimes, urban low-income communities that live near a lot of goods movement infrastructure, so like the warehouses, rail yards, what's another one that I'm looking for? Recycling facilities. They're oftentimes use industrial zoning codes, and so it makes it even harder for low-income communities to really have a reality where growing food or testing their soil is an issue. So out of those 88 cities, 61 of those cities have no mention of farms in their zoning code, although none prohibit them. 51 cities permit the growing and distribution of fruits and vegetables. And agriculture is regulated by 44 zoning codes and 12 municipal codes. And so another opportunity that was taken away, another opportunity that we learned through this event is how do we grow more advocacy locally around streamlining or creating a universal zoning codes for agriculture, especially within the urban interface. So on the horizon, with the conversations that we've been having, you know, one of them was land access, another one was community organizing networks. So the Regenerative and Urban Ag is pushing for an LA Urban Grower Alliance. We have an event happening on the 25th of March. The location might potentially be Midtown Farms in Watts. And so this is a way for us to really create a collective voice for growers. A lot of us really shy away from calling ourselves farmer because we don't want to discourage someone who's just growing food in their front yard or growing food in their local church, right? We want everybody to kind of feel empowered by the term grower or farmer, and which is why we went with the word grower. But yeah, this is an opportunity for us to continue uplifting the collective voice of people that want to grow food locally, of people that are really invested in, you know, abolishing food apartheids across the LA region. And another thing to note around this is that it's a way for us to really gather an understanding around what resources exist for us, what information is important for us to share, and then also more importantly is like networking, getting to meet each other, getting to know where we're from, getting to know what drives us to growing food and what's driving us to connect with other people that are doing this is definitely a space that is needed, and more spaces of that is needed. So if you live in an urban community, if you want to learn more about you know, how to start an alliance in your town, definitely invite you to this or just to connect. And I think that's it. I was like quick, straight to the point. But yeah, thanks. I'm trying to see if there's anything else I left out. But for the most part, this is just like an overview of, yes, policy is great and it could mean well, but if there's no infrastructure for a policy to really unfold in a way that it'll bring impact and bring opportunities for those that need it the most, then it's just kind of left to hang dry, which is what we've seen, right? Well, this policy passed in 2017, but only 10 permits have been issued by the city. But the more you ask, the more you demand for things, the more they have to listen and the more they have to meet you halfway. And so we're currently in that phase of like meeting the city and meeting the county halfway to ensure that agriculture site development is prioritized rather urgently, if anything. But yeah, I'll go ahead and close out my presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Janet. Yeah, that was awesome. It's also like, I think it's important for us to determine like, what is the low-hanging fruit that we can like leverage to encourage land access, acknowledging that there's a lot of like systemic barriers that we need to solve with other policies. Like, how do we work with what exists, right? Okay, I wanted to go back to some of the questions from earlier. This one is for you, Margaret, for FarmLink, specifically around like the idea, the concept of reparations. Does FarmLink support landholders and land seekers in that process around reparations? This question cited that Soulfire Farm in New York has their reparations map where BIPOC farmers and land stewards can post. But the FarmLink land portal aspects, is there an opportunity, I guess, to have a profile and create that kind of connection based on the profile that exists?
Would be possible to make that clear in the profile, and it's actually making me think that you know, that could be a really great addition to the portal in terms of some other type of designation with a land opportunity. So really making clear that if there are folks or organizations that are specifically wanting to make a land opportunity available as part of a reparations process, that we could have a way to actually more clearly designate that in the portal. And then I would just say generally that we're also very happy to work with people, you know, particularly if they've perhaps already connected and are wanting to kind of think through what that would look like or what that kind of agreement or transfer would look like. We certainly could provide support as well there. So, yeah.
Thanks. And then the next question I caught, also for FarmLink, and I think it's kind of around this kind of balance between aspiring farmers and beginning farmers, right? And figuring out where they are placed in our ecosystem of technical assistance. But yeah, it said, is the service you provided for support with lease agreements also only for folks that have 2 years of commercial farm experience, or is it accessible to aspiring farmers? And the follow-up question is also, where would you recommend that aspiring farmers go to find opportunities to farm?
Okay, so yes, officially the agreement building services would have that qualification of that minimum level of experience. We do ask that people who are accessing those services register as a land seeker. That being said, you know, if I know there's lots of specific situations, and sometimes people are a little uncertain how to qualify their experience. So I would say if you are, you know, in the process of trying to negotiate an agreement or you have questions, feel free to just reach out to us. We're always happy to talk with you. And if we're not the right fit, we can try to direct you to other support. So don't let that, you know, put you off from contacting us, and we may be able to support you. And then in terms of for aspiring farmers, you know, I think in terms of this question of land access, we really want to make sure that the folks who are going out and connecting with these land opportunities, that they are land ready in terms of being able to have a viable business on that land. And so, you know, I would really encourage you to look at some of the different incubator program options that are around. There are several of them we can try to share out. For example, Center for Land-Based Learning would be an option. So basically programs where there's kind of a farm training component, but then you also have an additional year or more to really get experience with production and with starting a business. Also ag parks. There's other types of farm training programs, like I know at Santa Rosa Junior College. So I would really encourage you to start there as an aspiring farmer before coming to organizations like FarmLink and to go to the next level in terms of finding land to start, you know, your own or expand your own business.
Yeah, makes sense. I don't see any other questions in the chat, and feel free to chime in if I've missed something. But I also wanted to like lift up, you know, as we were preparing for this session and as kind of Margaret had put in, oh, actually both slides, both presentations, like there's a lot of existing resources and toolkits that folks can kind of start to leverage. And there were a few that I thought it would be valuable to name, which is there's a Farmland Access Legal Toolkit from the Vermont Law School Center for Agriculture and Food Systems. There's also a toolkit for farm seekers via Land for Good. And then I also wanted to highlight the Sustainable Economies Law Center here in California has a toolkit called Seeds of Land Return. And that's like an opportunity to start exploring pathways for land back. I can imagine that reparations and that kind of land transfer could very much happen utilizing that toolkit. And so just naming, and I'll put a lot of these in the chat. But there are a lot of resources that exist. And it's really just about like, how do we get them all in one place, or like chart out like what's most appropriate for whomever based on where you kind of fall in the land access spectrum, or as a landowner, right? So yeah, just wanting to highlight that, as well as highlighting that, like, yeah, we've got like some really big systemic issues when it comes to land access, right? Like, as Janet highlighted, something that was intended to solve a serious issue caused like some benefits came out of it, but it's not solving these fundamental problems. And so we really do need to think about what are the many levers that we need to utilize, or policy programs that we need to develop in order to create that shift. And so part of that conversation will happen later today, as Deborah said earlier, later today at 6. I would highly, encourage folks, if you're interested in those types of conversations, to please join that. Also, we have more questions, so I'm gonna shift it back from my spiel. Janet, do you see that question in the chat? You want to go for it?
Yeah, so I will do my best to answer the permanent land access part. So the way that community thinks about that is through this lens of what already exists, which is land trusts, co-ops. Other avenues that exist is having a plot in a community garden, having a volunteer opportunity at already an existing farm. But in terms of like permanence of land access, it's having land where you can live out of while simultaneously growing food from there. So there's very few farms in LA where you can grow food and then also just live there. And the way that the existing policy for the AB 551 stands is you can't have any habitat-like infrastructure. And so how do we foster a community or a society where growing food means that you just can't have access to a restroom, or that you can't have access to storage space? And it has happened before where there was a community member in the city of Bell who built a greenhouse, and the city of Bell told her she needed to shut it down or she was going to get a fine. And she was just building a greenhouse. And it's just the way that municipal codes are written are actually working against, right, this possibility where people can grow food. So the idea of permanent is really around, how do we rethink property? How do we rethink, even though that, thinking of a program where you can, maybe the first step is you take a farmer training course, and then you need to spend X amount of time working on a land, and then maybe working towards developing a business model or some type of feeding model to your land, can then grant you into a pilot, or can then grant you into a program where you will be secured that land that you're working on towards the end of your term. And that it would have, your name on it, that you would learn throughout this process. What does it look like to pay property taxes? What does it look like to bring in water infrastructure? What does it look like? There's components that are needed to really help the individual visualize the responsibility, but also visualize the responsibility that goes beyond just growing food on that land, right? And that's, what is your relationship to the community? What is your relationship to the land? What is your relationship to, I think those are the biggest questions, right? It's like, how do we think beyond property when it comes to permanent models? And there's this really cool farm in Compton called Moonwater Farm. And they're trying to really change the way that people view property, because anybody in the community is welcome. There's public facilities that are, and this is at a house, this is at someone's home, which just converted that into a farm. And so I think, in terms of permanence, is that we want to create a cultural model for people to understand the responsibility and the accountability around land stewardship, right? And in order to do that, one of the things that we're trying to cultivate through this Urban Grower Alliance, and I think someone really hinted to that in the chat, is education. And education can start as, something as simple as what are ethics? What are the ethics that are needed around land stewardship? What is the ethics that is needed to be an urban grower? Because oftentimes you can have a lot of skills on the ground, you can have a lot of skills when it comes to the practice of growing food, but just as important as it is to have local food production, it's also important to foster community production. And so I think those are just a little bit of a little snippet of the conversations that we've been having as a community, and as people that are really critical about, okay, well, what is agriculture going to look like here in the city? What does it need to look like? And what is the responsibility, and what are the conversations and the education that is needed to uphold that? Great question. I hope that answered it.
Thanks, Janet. The next question I see here is for Margaret, and it's more of a clarifying question. Farmers don't need to have graduated into the Resilierator program to access the land portal, correct?
No, so there's no requirement that you've completed one of our educational programs in order to register with us and access the land portal, or to access those agreement building services either.
Great, I love it. Well, unless I see any other questions, I would love to kind of, open it up, or one, I guess, just thank you both, Jen and Margaret, for, spending this time with us and presenting on the work that you're both very deeply involved in, and sharing these resources with us all. I think it's so needed, and these conversations, and these just this transparency of oh, this is what's happening over here. These are the resources that we that actually, are available, and this is the way to kind of be able to leverage them or utilize them, is incredibly useful from my perspective, at least. So thank you both so much for the time. And any other parting words? Otherwise, we can let people free from the Zoom.
I guess just wanted to, again, encourage folks that if you are available for March 25th and you want to come through to the Urban Grower Alliance meeting in LA, you're more than welcome. I will share my email on the chat. And so if any of you have any questions or anything that in terms of partnership, don't hesitate in reaching out. You know, this is all relational, and it's relational for a greater purpose. So that's the shameless plug.
Can I answer the shameless plugs? I wonder, Jamie, if this might be a good opportunity to say that while there is a lot of really good work being done throughout California around land protection, land access, we recognize there's a lot more needed, and there's some current job opportunities that would be good to share with folks. I know you have some at CAFF to share as well, if you want to share that one. We also do at American Farmland Trust, looking for a land protection policy and program manager. So that's, you know, another way that folks can add to this work that's very much needed. And I'll drop that in the chat as well, that link.
Yeah. Yeah, we got a job opening for a policy advocate. You'd be working with me and Janet for sure. So definitely apply. I think the deadline's tomorrow, but we'll probably extend it.
I just dropped the job
yeah.
link description in the chat, so go check that out.
Yeah, if you're passionate about these issues, we welcome you with open arms. Come find us. But yeah, great idea, great point, Deb. Well, yeah, thanks everyone. Grateful for the time.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us. And we hope to see you at another workshop here at the conference.
Hope to see you at 6.
See y'all at 6. Come through.
Part 2.
Yeah. Part 2.
Right. Have a good afternoon, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.